Asbestos is a known carcinogen, and there's no safe level of exposure.
Mesothelioma is a miserable disease.
They must fight a truly global battle.
We want to demonstrate our enormous respect.
Keep up the good work. I look forward to the day when ADAO is no longer needed.
Fix it. Fix it. Everything in the world can be fixed.
Paul Zygielbaum unfortunately cannot be with us. He was scheduled to be here but had a conflict on his calendar, and the words that he would have brought us, Linda's going to share Paul's thoughts and her thoughts about asbestos in products, which is still with us. So Linda, come back.
Well, no one can take the place of Paul Zygielbaum. For those of you who have met him, he's brash, he's bold, he's similar to Larry Davis in many ways. Paul's profession, he actually was a rocket scientist. Yes, a rocket scientist. I'm going to deliver a rocket scientist presentation. That being said, you hear about Celeste talking about willfuls, the willful violations. There's terms in OSHA and our government agency, it's a willful. And the fine's reduced to $24,000. And I want you to think about that for a second. One of Alan's chemotherapy treatments, just one, was $50,000. So that violation reduction, that wouldn't even cover one oncology treatment. That being said, how do you get people to care? Paul, being a patient and a very, very intelligent gentleman and committed to ADAO, he said to Doug and I, he said, how can we get people to care? I need people to understand that this threat is going on. It's enough to know it's in buildings, but when it comes into consumer products, you have different regulatory agencies that become involved. It steps up your voice and awareness, and let's face it, we like to shop in organic markets and the Whole Foods. If you have the choice to buy something that has asbestos or doesn't have asbestos, I don't think I have to ask this group which product you would choose. But we don't know what has asbestos. So let's take a look at Paul's presentation. What Paul wanted to do was to create awareness through consumer products. He did so much research and managed this project brilliantly. It began in 2006. It concluded in 2009 with a second phase. And what happened over a year and a half when we began in 2006 is ADAO, under the leadership of Paul, we investigated and tested 250 consumer products. Yep, 250. We had many collaborative meetings with our Science Advisory Board and others. Doug and I didn't really want to be sued by the product testing results, so we decided, along with Paul's guidance, to do a triple confirmation. And what does that mean? We used 3 independent laboratories to indeed test these products. Once we got a positive, we sent it to the other 2 labs. The only products that Doug and I would bring forward on behalf of ADAO would have a triple confirmation of asbestos. But how do you find out? It's a needle in a haystack. As we know, that the mission of Paul's idea was really interesting. To look at consumer products and to identify where asbestos must be for a country that hasn't banned asbestos posed a very large problem for us. It was intense. We had so many different regulatory and interagency within ADAO regulatory processes to review the data. And at the end, I think what speaks volumes in first phase were 18 products actually tested positive. But we didn't bring all 18 forward of fears of litigation and repercussions from the asbestos industries and manufacturers, which we know have far more money than we do. What we brought forward were 5 products. 5. And 1 was a child's toy. This happened, some of you may recall, in 2007 when it was Christmas time and it was all about lead and toys. Well, Doug brilliantly managed this media frenzy when they found out that indeed in the CSI kit up there was tremolite powder. And as Tony pointed out and show you slides, that's one of the most deadly fibers there is of asbestos. It's a powder in a kid's toy for fingerprinting, designed to be placed on a table and blown. You can imagine the calls I got from other mothers saying, that present's wrapped under my tree, and I don't know what to do. And worse yet were some calls, my child's opened up their present, Now what do I do? That's the problem. What do you do? So phase one raised awareness significantly. And we actually hand-couriered these reports to the EPA and the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Guess what? They didn't reply. Well, I learned in Washington, no reply is a reply. I always give someone a second chance. I resent them diplomatically. No reply. The third time, the EPA person, who I won't name, she's very powerful up there, it's not the administrator, she said, but Linda, I don't really think I ever saw him. Could you resend him? Third time, no reply. So I think knowing what we know within buildings, as Celeste brilliantly profiled, the reduction in fines, the correlation between what we bring through customs, the data from USGS, we know we have a huge problem. But I'll be honest, how do you get everybody else to care outside of this room? It has to be relevant and explained and correct. Phase two, we did have public justice defend our results against the manufacturers. The CSI kit represented a show that was on CBS. It began about a 12-month horrific process for me personally to be brought into the litigation circle. We had to retest the products to confirm our data because guess what? As Dr. Frank always says, there's always science for sale. And you know what? The industry can always find those scientists to get you those false negatives. So it was defending our product testing results against the Planet Toys who manufacture the kit. I think what's most telling is Paul brilliantly managed this project, and when I was brought in with public justice defending our results, I sat across the table by a very posh gentleman dressed in a shiny Italian suit, and that's a compliment for our friends in the back, and French cufflinks. And he sat there and he was like, well, I think it's only 30,000 kits. And I'm like, 30,000 kits, really? I said, do you think you can get the owner on the phone? I'm kind of curious if he manufactured any others and where that termalite came from. Can you identify the quarry? Anything else you want to share? We're in this meeting, legal meeting. And he says, well, I don't think I can reach him right now. I said, well, really? Where he's in Hong Kong? Well, I looked at my iPhone. I said, but my daughter taught me how to use it. It's really just 7 o'clock. We could give him a call. So we used the best technology, the best defense. We had public justice take this case on, and we ultimately settled. We didn't get money. We didn't settle for that. But we were able to have the toy taken off the shelves. And justice doesn't have a timeline, as Anne brilliantly said. And sometimes our actions can't have a timeline either. It took a long time, but we did move this forward. We retested, and you can see more results of that from phase two. That was just basically confirming what we already knew. So there are many conclusions that Paul would want you to know. One is change can happen. Two is asbestos remains a threat in consumer products. Our government needs to do more. We agree with Celeste and others who are commenting on a ban. That's what ADAO continues to do in Washington. And the regulatory constraints or inefficiencies cause asbestos exposures to continue. So as we know, it's in our buildings. We know we can be in consumer products, and we know we're importing 1,000 metric tons just this last year. That we have a lot of work to do. So I would like to make, we'll make a cumulative page of presentations and materials that folks would like to have referenced after this conference, and we'll make sure that you can access all of the product testing results that we put online with detailed in-depth of what Paul managed. So on behalf of Paul, thank you, and Paul, we thank you.
Keep up the good work. I look forward to the day when ADAO is no longer needed.
Fix it. Fix it. Everything in the world can be fixed.